Well, Cari, welcome to my podcast. You're my first
Yay.
interview, and I'm so excited that you're here. One of my best friends from growing up, and we're still friends to this day, which
We
means
have
good
made it
things.
through the trenches and we're still friends. But thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming on. I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to get anybody on because you never know with the homeschool
I'll
crew.
take one for the
Uh,
team while you're looking for others.
yeah, the lamb to slaughter. Anyway, Uh, but yeah, just to like kind of give people like the down low of like how we know each other, and we've been friends for a really long time. I like try to think back to.
I can't think of a time when we weren't friends or didn't know of each other. I could not tell you how we became friends. Like I don't have a distinct memory in my mind that's like, oh, that's the moment and from then on we were friends. You've just kind of always been there.
Yeah, I mean, your dad was my guitar instructor, so I know that prior to that, I feel like we had met and known each other, but I was around. I want to say maybe 13, 12,
It
13.
was right in those juicy years
Yeah,
of adolescence.
exactly. Yeah, so I feel like we've known each other basically junior high through high school, net
Yeah.
college,
Yeah.
adults. Yeah, we've been good friends for a long time. We went to prom together,
Yeah, that was something I was gonna bring up too. But we did.
and
We did go to prom together. That was an experience.
yeah, which let's get into that at some point. But
Yeah,
what like were you? I wasn't homeschooled all the way through, but were you a homeschool kid all the way through?
all the way through. Ever
Dang,
since kindergarten, I have not, except for college, I have not stepped foot in like a public school.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
And um, you're the oldest. You're the oldest of three,
Oldest of three.
and
Yep,
so you kind of got like the brunt of it. Like you kind of got like thrown in, and you were like
I did.
the test
I was
subject.
the
Then
test subject for a lot of things in all aspects of life, whether it was homeschooling, whether it was extracurricular activities, church activities, just growing up in general life stuff. I was the test subject, older sibling, the headliner, the one to go through everything first, and hopefully, my younger siblings got it a little easier. But I think we all experienced, life in different ways as you do. But
yeah. See, Madison and I, we went. That's my sister. We went through like it at the same time. So even though we weren't in the same grade, we were going through it at the same time. So she was homeschooled all the way through, but I was second grade through high school,
oh,
and
I
then moved
I
away to
feel like I
college.
didn't even know that. You have not experienced homeschooling the whole way. You actually went to a was it a public or private school? Well,
I went to a public school,
okay.
and then yeah, through first grade, and then we moved to Ojai.
Okay.
Um, yeah, shout out to the hometown. But
Hometown where
yeah,
I
we
am
moved.
still
Yeah,
located.
yeah, we moved from Ventura to Ojai, and that was kind of like my parents had like decided to shift it, and yeah, it was like brutal because it was just like I was used to seeing friends every day
Yep.
and like being in class and having a teacher, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden like that mom was that for me. So like for me, it was always really weird and different.
Yeah.
I got used to it, but it was really strange to begin with.
Yeah.
Whereas like that's all you knew school wise was like mom's
Yeah.
a teacher, dad steps in sometimes, like. But what did like a typical school day look like that you can remember? And it could be
Oh
at any
man.
point. I know it probably changed a lot, but
It was constantly changing. I will tell you that. And that is one of the beauties of homeschooling, I will say, is that at least for my family, we didn't always have a strict schedule where it's like everybody up at 7 or 8, school till 12, then lunch, yada, yada. I think it was very much every day was different. If we had to do, piano lessons, we were able to go do that. If we just needed a day outside, we could go hang out at the park and read. If we, wanted to take an art class, we could do that. So every day was definitely different. I have very fond memories in the early days of our homeschooling where, we would do some English or math or history in the morning, and then it would be time for PE. So our PE was go outside and find something to do. very much.
Yep. I had that too. Give mom a break.
Give mom a break, and mom can stay inside and process everything, that she's going through because it's a lot of work to homeschool. And we would put on our roller skates and go out to our driveway. And I remember roller skating with my sisters in circles. I want to say an hour, 2 hours at a time. We had a giant RV in our driveway. We would go in there and play house. We would, or at least I would build contraptions that I could, some sort of vehicle with like a dolly and a dog cage on top that I could pull my sisters around. Like, it's weird to think about the PE that I had compared to what normal kids had. You know, we're not a very sporty family, so roller skating
Same.
was about it. My sisters took gymnastics, I took dance for a bit, but that was the extent of PE.
Yeah.
So,
No, I remember that. I mean, you've seen my backyard. It's like we had a tree swing, and yeah, we would
yep.
like we would push each other out of the tree and swing on it, and yeah, just like be silly. And roller skating was like a big part. I mean, also like within the homeschool community that we shared, like they had roller skating day at Skating Plus,
Oh
and like
yeah.
go to that, and
Oh, those were
actual
fun.
interaction with other people.
Those were great. I feel like it was like like the first one of the Thursdays of every month. It was like, let's go to Skating Plus and, you know, roller skate. And then I would I would be very envious of everyone because they could all do the races. They had like a race time where they would have everybody line up and skate around the rink. And I never was brave enough to conquer that, but it was always really cool watching the cool kids in homeschooling compete in the races.
It's so funny to look back and be like, there was cool kids, and then there was like the not cool kids, and it's like, no, we were all just like not cool kids.
We were all just not cool, but in my head, I had to have like I observed a lot of people growing up within that community, and there were definitely cliques. There were definitely cool kids. There were not as cool kids. I always assumed that I was just a not cool kid because I always looked up to the older kids, which I think is a normal
Yeah.
thing in high school or
Oh
junior
yeah.
high, anyways. Everybody sort of looks up to the next grade. But yeah, that's the funny thing about homeschooling for me too, was there was definitely no shortage of cliques and jealousy and, you know, I feel like there might have been some bullying. I don't know. I didn't really experience it to the extent of,
No, there for sure was. There for sure
but
was. And I was on both sides of it. So like, I'm a different person now, but
yeah,
but I've been on
we've
both
all
sides of that.
grown.
But yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're all better people, hopefully,
We are.
because of our experiences. But you brought up like cliques, and it reminded me of like, and just groups in general. It's like one of the things that we shared was we were both mimes,
Yes.
on the homeschool mime team,
If you have to Google
and
what a mime is, I will understand. They're not super common.
yeah,
At least I didn't really know what it was until, I joined a team of mimes.
yeah. So like for us, it was interesting because most people like when you look up a mime, like it's basically like some dude on the street corner in France who is like pretending to be stuck in a box or blowing up a balloon or like just really it's like a clown basically. But like our mime troupe was it was Christian centric, so but we would basically take music and put stories to it and then silently play characters in like songs. And so I see there's like a meme on TikTok that goes around and it's the like everything by Lifehouse and
It's
like
always that song.
for anybody who has never been a mime but maybe you were in youth group and you're like I remember that sketch. Yeah, think of like a bunch of people with like white grease paint on their face and like doing that song, that it's that kind of a thing.
Yep, that's a good reference.
How long were you a mime?
I want to say 5 years, I think,
Okay.
around 5 years. And I know I said earlier how, didn't really know what a mime was. But before I joined the team, my parents would take me to shows done by the mime team at the time, which was called Grace in Action. They were like the mimes before we had our own mime troupe. And so I would go watch shows that they would perform and I just thought it was really interesting and cool. And like, to me, that was what the cool kids were doing was Being Mimes and Everything by Lifehouse. I didn't realize how common it was to do a skit to that song. I thought that was our thing. I thought we made it up. But then I started
Same.
seeing videos of youth groups doing it, and I was like, wait, that's what we did. Did they copy us? Did we copy them? Like,
I mean, that goes into like it's so interesting now because like I also went to a Christian college and so connected with more people who also kind of grew up in like similar situations and like but all over the country at that point because I moved from California to Illinois and then now live in Tennessee and stuff. And so it's interesting to connect with these people and they have like these similar like youth group stories, like even if they're not a homeschool kid or like they have stories of like homeschool kids in
yeah,
their lives that they're like, oh, that's just they're a bunch of weirdos. And it's like, well, yeah, we were a bunch of weirdos. And I'm like,
fully acknowledge that. Yes.
but I was telling somebody about the everything song and like, oh yeah, we were mimes, so we would like wear all black and whatever. And they're like, we did that sketch, but like we didn't dress up like that. And I'm like, yeah, you're one of the lucky ones.
Yeah.
You know, and so we did so many songs and like for everything too. We had like Christmas songs and we had like Fourth of July, like patriotic stuff that we did as well, which
It was a mime era, if you will, or the mime lore. It was just people, we were really popular, I feel like, or to me, looking back now, I felt like within the homeschool community, we were very popular. We were really desired by churches because that's what we would do is go perform locally to different churches. And some were not local too, if you remember. We took the troupe to Skid Row in Los Angeles
yep.
and performed there. Like, I feel like we went all over California. But we had so many songs, and you're so right. There was a Christmas season where they had an age limit for Mime, and then, the younger siblings could join during Christmas, and they had all these fun Christmas songs that we would do. Like, the library and extent of work we did, we had mime camps, which would be like a whole weekend where we would spend the night at a church and just practice and drill like mime songs. Like it was a time for sure.
No, it definitely was like an era, and
Yeah.
I only did it for 3 years. I did it like junior high, and then I think maybe my freshman year of high school,
Yeah, you weren't
something
it
like
wasn't
that.
too
But
long that you were on the team, I felt like.
I was out of it pretty quickly. Like, but it's so weird because all of the kids who were a part of that, like we were also like theater kids and like musicals and like all
Oh
that kind of
yeah.
stuff. Which like that's a whole nother era of like
And that's also
backyard
ironic too,
musicals and stuff.
because mimes, can't talk, but we were the most talkative musical group, I think, ever. Like when we weren't performing, we were singing theater songs in groups, we were talking, we were, it was
Yeah.
it was
Well, it was the only time we got to interact with other people, right?
yeah.
So like, because that's the thing with homeschooling is like, yeah, you have your siblings, or in some cases, like if you're an only child, like you have mom and dad, but like you, a big misconception is like, oh, well, you don't have any friends,
I hear that
and
all
it's
the
like, well,
time.
that's actually not true. Like, yeah, that does happen all the time. I still
Like, oh,
get
you
that
were
to this day.
homeschooled? Did you have any friends? What was your mom the teacher, your dad a principal? It's like, yes, I did
Yeah,
have friends.
I
I was not isolated.
I love telling people I'm like I went to prom with my mom, like stuff like that. Um,
I
just
mean,
to
don't get me
screw with
wrong.
them.
It was cringe. Like prom was cringe. Like a lot
Yeah,
of the experience had cringy moments, but we were never alone. Like we had our groups of people.
yeah, it was a lot of parents just kind of like trying to give us somewhat of like a normal school experience, right? Because
Yeah.
like we had field trips, and that's the beautiful part about being part of the homeschool community is like
Yeah.
I can't imagine how I would be if I didn't have that, because I would have
Same.
just literally been stuck at home all the time, right? So it's like, I at least got some semblance of like normalcy by like we had field trips and we did school dances and we had like groups of people like the mime troupe, right? It's like we had
Yeah.
activities and things that you could be a part of, but at the same time, it was like it's not the same.
I
It's the
feel
same but
because it was
different.
like the same people because we were a part of this
Yeah.
community of parents who came together and said we want to homeschool, we want to homeschool our kids together. However, originated, and we would see the same people every week. It was like, okay, Mondays were mime practice, so you get to see your fellow mime friends. Fridays was group solutions where we do our our 3 periods and our classes together with a lot of the same people, but it was a bigger group of people.
Yeah.
Like same people, like looking back now, we were really close with everyone. Like you had your people, and outside of your siblings, like those were your close friends, the people you did everything with. You went to dances with, you know, graduated 8th grade and high school with, you know, did classes and mime and shows with. Like it was the same people all throughout junior high and high school. So
Yeah.
definitely we're never
Which like
alone.
yeah, and I'm thankful for that. And that's very similar to I think a lot of people's high school experience is like they have their friends that go through high school with them and like you know do life and then potentially go to the same colleges and
Yeah.
like stuff like that. But it's hard to explain because like until you do it, you're like until you're a part of it, you're like no, this is just like so vastly different. And like even like the non-homeschool friends that we did have like they could tell there's a difference, right? There's like a social awkwardness and there's a and there's just like also we were like Christian homeschool kids, so on
That's a
top of
big
like the homeschool
factor.
thing
Yeah.
has is like the homeschool thing already has this kind of like awkwardness baked into it, but then you tack on like a Christian element because most of us were homeschooled for religious reasons,
Yeah.
and so parents were not teaching us about evolution.
Right.
Science was in my family
Some history
kind of was
was a
like
little different.
pseudoscience. Yeah, everything was like viewed through this like Christian lens of like
Yeah, absolutely.
even like the jobs you're gonna do future down the line, right? And like
Yep.
it's interesting because it's just like this religious tied with education
Yeah.
upbringing.
That's a huge part. And I always wondered too, actually coming out of being homeschooled, were there homeschoolers that existed that weren't Christian? Because all of the homeschoolers I knew were Christian, like studied, you know, Christian values, and that's just what I assumed was the case, was that all homeschoolers were, or home educators were Christians. It's probably not the case, and it always made me wonder what someone who was homeschooled outside of Christianity or a religious base, what their experience was like compared to what mine was.
No, that's a good question. I
I
don't know that I've
just
met
I've
anybody
thought
who
that, so like it's been in the back of my mind every once in a while. I've been like, because obviously religion plays a huge part into how you're educated. So with that lens, there were definitely a few several subjects that I learned under the Christian lens that when I got to college were completely different.
talk about that. Like what give me an example of that.
So you mentioned evolution. That's a huge part. Growing up with in Christianity, we were, you know, taught about creation versus evolution. And I similarly with, you know, some history as well. God is the foundation of everything, you know, from creation on. So when you get to college and you find out God is, I don't want to say nowhere to be found, but he's definitely not, you know, Christianity, God is not in the center of anything that's taught. And so you're going to a science class in college going, what's the Big Bang? Like you hear about it, but at least for my education, we were never taught about other alternative or what the rest of society was learning about evolution. We
Yeah.
were only taught creation. So
Yeah.
I I don't want to say I had to unlearn creation necessarily, but going to college and talking to people who didn't know what creation was and or didn't believe in it, having to learn, oh, I grew up in this lens. There's this whole other world of people who believe in so many different things about how the world came to be. And that was
Yeah.
an incredible learning curve for me to find, oh, not only is Christianity, God, not centered in college education, high school education, but you know, it I don't know how to word that, but it was
It's
just
like a
it was a
foreign it's like a foreign thing to other people, right?
yeah,
Where it's like because I even going to college, like I went to a Christian college,
right.
and so most of the people were on the same page. But I remember taking a science class, and he presented 6 different options to creation. And there was like the stuff we grew up with, which was like God created the world in 7 days or like
Right.
6 days, and then on the seventh day he rested, right? And then like we're in a young earth and like all of these things, right? And so it's like a very literal translation of the Bible.
Yeah.
And then he was talking about a not so literal translation of the Bible where it's like God created the earth, but he basically kicked off evolution, which,
Interesting. Which caused
slowly
Big
worked its
Bang or
way and like
something.
built things, right?
Yeah.
And then because the concept of time shifts, it's a whole complicated thing, but but like because the concept of time shifts, the way that when it was written down, right, when Genesis was written down, it's like the perception is like, oh, it was such a short period of time,
Oh
when it's
yeah.
like, well, it actually wasn't, but okay. um
That's really
and so
cool
things
that
like
you're
that.
able to that and that's something that we were never really exposed to being homeschooled, but that's so cool that you had a professor who was able to say, we do have the Bible, but, taking into consideration time shifts and how things were transcribed and translations and, really makes you learn that no one really truly knows anything.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
just what you study and what you perceive and what you believe. And, when you grow up in schooling, being taught this is fact, this is truth, and then you go into this giant world of a billion different facts and truths, it all comes down to you deciding what you believe for yourself. And that was something
Yeah,
that, you know, you believe what your parents tell you and what your peers tell you. Not, and you can still agree with that when you grow up, or you can find out for yourself, this is actually not something that, I want to run with. So I think that's cool
yeah,
that even within a Christian college, your professor was still willing to consider all options and weigh, so many other
yeah.
variables.
Well, I remember he brought up the word evolution, and half the people in the class like grimaced at it. And I was like, I'm intrigued to hear what he has to say about this, right? Because he's also presenting, Darwinism and all these things. And
Right.
it's like, okay,
Another
well, so
trigger word. There are so many
right,
words
Darwin,
that
yeah, it's like
you did not hear growing up.
exactly. And I did a religions class too with another professor who it was a mix of like religion studies plus apologetics a little bit. And
Oh,
so like
cool.
the first day he's asking us like, what do you believe and all these things, like, do you believe in a literal translation of the Bible? Is there storytelling in there? All these different things,
Yeah.
right? So he's like asking, he's trying to pick at people,
Yeah.
and he picks on me in the class, and he's like asking me all these questions, and I'm like just spitting out, I'm spewing the normal responses, and he's like, but why, but why, but why, but why?
Oh,
He's like the little kid tugging on his mom, being like, but why? And I was just like, which is like, because my mom told me. you know because that's what the pastor said.
yes.
And he's like, that's fine, but you also have a responsibility to judge for yourself what you actually believe, right? And it's like,
That's good.
and
I like that.
it was brutal. Like I remember just being like, I went back home and I was just like, or back to my dorm room, and I'm sitting there and I'm just like, I hate this professor, I hate this professor, I hate
I
this
hate this
professor,
class.
because he was pushing me really to like a discomfort zone where I was like, were they lying to me? Were they all of these things, right? And so, and
But the
that happened
discomfort
multiple
is
times.
is a good place where you can actually learn stuff. And I found some of
Yeah,
my hardest classes and hardest teachers have been the most valuable because that him drilling you, but why, but why, but why, really forces you uncomfortably to look at, yeah, why?
and that went for multiple subjects too. It's like not only science and religion, but like math and like the way we looked at these things, because our parents are not like, they don't know everything,
No,
right? And it's like,
they're
and they're
doing this
taking
for the
on the
first
role of like,
time.
yeah, exactly, they're taking on the role of teacher. And like I had a mom who thankfully had gone to college to be a teacher, so she kind of had some of
Yeah,
those skills, but she wanted to specialize in English. So that was her strengths, and my dad was more math, but like they weren't creative people. So
right.
doing that's why your dad became my music teacher, because they were like, well, we have to hire somebody to help our kid understand what this is, and be creative.
Yeah,
And and then science was like, week two. It's like, well, let's find somebody else who is stronger in science to help our kids study, and
and that's so
I'm thankful for
cool.
that,
But
because
yeah,
it put it more in a normal classroom setting, I would say. Like I mean, you knew this. Like you come over to my house and my mom would teach English class, right? And she'd be like, "Here's the reading list. And here's
Yeah.
the whatever," and we would have like it's 6 people, but it's it's like okay, well we have a study group and we have classmates who we can like ask for notes about, and stuff like that. So there's a sense of somewhat of normalcy
Absolutely.
to a
And
school.
well, and it's so cool that you mentioned that too, because, your parents being focused more on the academic side, my parents were completely opposite. Like my dad being a recording studio owner, musician, both parents college graduates, but in completely different things than your parents. My dad was the first guitar major, at his university, and my mom graduated with a degree in film production. Like, not something that you would look at and say they're ready to be, full on high school teachers to their kids. But that's what I admire them so much for, is they felt the calling that they were supposed to homeschool us, and they took that on in such a different way, and everyone was different. And that's why I love how, your parents saw you had this desire for guitar. They leaned on my dad to teach you guitar.
Yeah,
My mom definitely needed support in the academic side, and so she would lean on your mom for things like English classes, other people for science classes, math, and they would use their strong suits, but also I really respect them for leaning on other people and valued members of the homeschool community who knew what they were talking about.
yeah,
Some
yeah.
parents who they were so good at, science. It's like, okay, we're going to send our kids over to your house and you guys are going to go through the science textbook with them. And it's like, oh, that's the beauty of
Exactly.
homeschooling. You can do that.
And that's yeah, I highly encourage like anybody who's thinking about it is like find that group of people, because when you do, my mom did it on her own, and maybe your mom was this way too, or your parents were this way too, but my mom really did it on her own for the first couple years, and she was exhausted. It was just like it was utterly terrible. And
Yeah,
it's like
same.
I look back on it, and it's
I remember.
stressful. It was stressful as a kid, to go from like I had gone to regular school, I knew there was structure, to like there is no structure, and like I even as a kid, I remember being like, I don't think I'm learning enough. Like I don't think I'm,
Yeah,
or I'm really bad
100%.
at this, and her not knowing how to help me because she's like, well, I have to learn it too. To the point where by the time I was in high school, a lot of it was self-taught. Like it was just like,
Yeah.
here's the textbook, you do your modulars, whatever, the
Modulars.
modules,
Yeah.
modulars, um, the modules, and like you're gonna learn XYZ. Come to us if you have questions, that kind of thing. But also, what's cool about homeschooling is like you can focus on those areas of like strengths and weaknesses, right? So it's like I was more creative in high school. You were more creative person, and so like having parents that kind of like push you in that direction to be like, okay, yeah, like more guitar lessons, or working in a studio, or starting your own business, or whatever it was, to kind of like push you in a direction to be like, it's a tailored education, as opposed to like I had public school friends who were just like, oh yeah, I go and I learn this thing, and then I just like regurgitate it during the test, and I'm like, my history is like World War II because I'm just like really into World War II right now,
Yeah.
And so my parents were like, watch every World War II movie and read all these
Yes.
books and whatever. It was like really hyper focused. And you brought up
It's
a
so true.
PE earlier, and I laughed because like my parents my PE in high school was paintball and airsoft, and like they funded it because they were like, that's PE, but
I
there was
forgot about
regulations
that.
around
You're
like
really big
you're
into
gonna play
that.
this frequently, and you're gonna go with these friends, and like, but we got our friends parents to also be into it, so it was like, okay, PE for a lot of us was we went to a friend's house and played airsoft for 6 hours on the weekend.
Yep.
It just worked.
It's just that was just what you did. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
So I was gonna bring up, we kind of briefly mentioned it earlier, but prom. We went to prom
Yes,
together,
we did.
and it was your senior year, it was I think my junior year,
Yeah,
right?
I'm pretty sure.
And super weird. It was a fun experience. It's my favorite prom that I've gone
It
to. I went to two.
You
That was
got to
my
go to
favorite
two.
prom.
Oh, I only went to one.
Number two was worse, but number one, I had fun.
I did too. I I can't remember truly who even put it on. If it was, I think it was homeschoolers, like just collectively putting on a
From
prom.
what I remember, it was the Calvary Chapel school
Okay,
where we had group solutions. They had a school, and then they would put on prom every year. But their school numbers were so low, so they
that's
would invite
right.
the Achieve kids to come be a part of it. So it was this mix of like private school, private Christian educated kids who most of had been homeschooled, and then just like homeschoolers. And the year we went, that was the year it was at a golf course, right?
It was at a nice golf course, and
Yep.
absolutely, I mean, that's high school, so hormones are raging. You don't know what's going on. Does he like me? Does she like me? I mean, we were just friends, but you're looking at everyone, you're hoping you look okay. It just everything's just at a level 2000 at least
Yeah.
inside for me, you're so just I was very nervous, and I can't think of why now, but it was just in general just nerves. It was my first big, dance where my parents weren't there, and I'm just with my friends, and so it was very, very nerve wracking. But I ended up having such a blast. It was a very structured event, I will say. Having not been to a high school prom or a public school prom, I think a lot of things that, or the general stereotypes of what people experience on prom night is definitely not what we experienced. We went to a 2 hour long prom where it was dinner promptly and then dancing. And then the second the DJ started playing Thrift Shop, which was, had bad words in it, I remember them shutting down the dance floor completely and cutting off the evening. And
Forgot
all
about
right,
that.
it is 8:30 or 9 p.m. It is time to go home. And, you know, and I just remember, I think we all got in and out after or something like that just to
I think so.
decompress, something along those lines. But it was a very short evening from what I remember.
It it was yeah, a lot of hype for kind of nothing. To be to be honest.
A lot of
Um
hype.
yeah, cuz like for a little bit of context, like our experiences going to school dances growing up was like swing, ballroom, and cotillion dancing. So it was very there was no grinding, there was no
No, twerking
there
did
was
not exist. Like,
twerk
or if it
oh
did, we
twerking would
did
get you
not.
kicked out. There was dress code, and so like a very structured event. Like, yeah, as a dude who had dads come and basically be like, "Don't touch my daughter like that," it's like stuff like that. It's
Very
like
strict.
very yeah, exactly,
And
very
just never
strict.
forget, never forget the yearly what they would call English country dance, where everyone wears Bridgerton clothes.
Yep.
It looked like a scene from Bridgerton. Yearly English country dance, very proper, very, structured. So you were not seeing any immodesty. You were not seeing anyone, dancing inappropriately. It was just,
Yeah.
you just have a good time
Well, and I think that's what
within
made
limits.
prom so funny was because like you and I were friends. We went together, and then your best friend went with my best friend,
Yeah.
and so the four of us went together. And I think another friend went with us as well. So I think there's
Yeah,
five
there's
of
five
us.
of us. Yeah.
There's five of us in total, and so we were only used to having danced like swing music, and so we get there and they're playing pop music, and it's like no one knows how to dance to it, right? And so we're like, what are we supposed to do? And it's like we'll just go out there and shake it.
We were so uncomfortable. I feel like our
Yeah.
our the couple that we went with started swing dancing because that's what you know. That's what we knew. I mean, you hear a song, you grab a partner, and you do the Lindy Hop. You don't
Yeah.
just step side to side. I remember being so uncomfortable. Just a wide dance floor with the DJ and lights. It was like this feels slightly wrong. This is not what I'm used to.
Yeah. I think I was a little bit more used to it only
Yeah.
because
Well, you were just cool. You were always like outside of the cringy homeschool. I feel like
well,
you
I
always
had
just
so
knew what was cool. I don't know.
I don't look it if you're watching the video, I'm very much a white boy, but my I'm a quarter Hispanic, and my Hispanic side of my family at family reunions, it's a massive dance party. So I think I kind of already had this like I know what to do in this circumstance. Like
You
we're just
did,
gonna go out
yeah,
there and like you just shake it. Like you just
yeah.
shake your booty and
And
have a good time,
you
kind of a
did, and
deal.
that's what helped me be more comfortable. Was like, okay, so he's dancing. However, so I guess I can, you know.
Yeah. And you
Still
make
not
stuff
knowing
up,
what
right?
to do, but
You're gonna
yeah.
do the sprinkler, and you're pushing the
Yeah.
lawnmower, and it's like you just being silly and goofy, and that was what it was all about. And I think what was nice was like our prom experience was not because we were also just friends. I don't know about you. I can speak for you, but I didn't feel a pressure to be like, oh, it's gonna end like it's not a movie, right? It's not
Oh
gonna
yeah,
end
no.
with like
No.
a romantic anything. And so it's just like we're here to have fun. Let's just have fun
Yeah, it
and
was
be
like
goofy
it
and be
was just
silly.
chill and we were just yeah, we were exactly that, goofy and silly and just friends and I didn't feel any sort of pressure or like, you know, really desire to have anything more than just having a good time. And we did.
Yeah,
Once the
yeah,
nerves wore off and we had dinner and it was like, hey, just breathe, just go out on the dance floor. And I would never watch a video of me dancing at that prom ever if that existed. I would
same.
never want to see it again. But, it was my first opening into, um, you know, the world of not even
Yeah,
normalcy, just what a dance floor looked like.
yeah. You want to know what's so funny too is that like, um, it, when Maddie and I got married,
Mm.
and Cari, you Cari DJ'd our wedding,
Oh
but like
yeah.
our wedding specifically was like we are not playing any swing music,
Right.
and so my it was weird because I had friends come up to me and be like, "Oh, are you gonna play any swing music?" And I was like, "No," because like we're here to party, like we're here to have a good time and not exclude people. And they're like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "We're just gonna dance. Like I don't just go out on the dance floor and be
What about the
silly and
Virginia
like
Reel? Are we not
exactly. What
doing
about
the
the Virginia
Virginia
Reel? What
Reel?
about like yeah. What about,
West
doing
Coast
all these
song or
awkward dances from us
something.
being kids? And I'm like, well, half the people here, the people on my wife's side, they don't know how to do any of that. So they're just going to sit by and idly be weirded out by like all of my friends.
And I feel like at that time too, you had gone off to college, you had lived, this whole different life and you were getting married. A lot of people that were at your wedding, I don't want to say had not moved forward. Everyone moves forward in their own way, but they were still experiencing the homeschool dances, if that makes sense. That was still forefront in their mind, maybe doing community college, but you had gone out, stepped into this whole other city, whole other life, whole other, world and came back, getting married. I don't know how to quite say that,
Yeah.
but and so they go to a wedding expecting, oh, there's going to be swing dancing. Still in that mentality of that's just what you do.
Yeah. Like, let's talk about that a little bit because, like, that was, I think, the transition from being a homeschool kid, especially if you are homeschooled all the way through high school, to going out and like starting a career, whether that's like going to college, community college, like just getting a job, whatever it is, it looks so different for all of us. Like
Yeah.
I immediately left. I was like, I moved out.
Yeah.
I did college in 3 years. I came back. I lived at home for a year, um, for some health reasons, and then I moved to Tennessee, and then I've been there ever since. Right, and
Yep.
so uh, you know that for me is what worked. But a lot of people, like you said, got stuck with like community college or they just existed at home still. And I think that plays into like having parents who went to school versus parents who didn't. Was like my parents, college educated people. And so that was what they knew was the next step. And so they were pushing me towards that or at least directing me in this kind of like, they knew once you hit this age, you're an adult. Like you need to go make decisions for yourself.
Yeah.
And so kind of that driving pressure where a lot of homeschool parents I think get stuck is they're like the end goal for them is like get the kid through high school, right?
It's
And they
not
get the
get
kid
them
through high
out, it's
school
get them through high school.
exactly, and they get them
Yeah.
through high school, and then they go, well, what do we do now? you know, and
I did
and
always
there's
admire
nothing
your mom
wrong.
with that. I remember hearing and I remember being surprised when that was, your parents, they had a very firm feeling on that. And I was like, you mean they kick you out at that age? It's like, no, not kicking out, but similar to a baby bird leaving the nest. It's like, all right, it's your turn to go.
I had a decision to make. The
Hmm.
decision was go to school or get a job and pay rent. And I
Yep.
was like, go to school. That just made more sense to me
Yeah.
and for what I wanted to do with my life at the time. But yeah, I think a lot of people And there's no shame in that, in like being like, oh, well, I'm gonna stick around for a few years and figure it
Yeah,
out or whatever. Like, there's
people
no
were
shame
taking
in that.
gap
It's
years and figuring out what they wanted to
yeah,
do, and I truly think a lot of us didn't really know what to do after high school.
yeah,
It
and
was
that's
like,
okay.
and it's okay. I mean, that's a big thing for everyone after high school is, okay, what do I
Yeah.
do now? I feel the pressure of the entire world.
Is there anything that you feel like your parents could have done to kind of like help you in that time period where like, because I know you stuck around home for a little bit and
Yeah.
like you did some community college
Yeah.
and working and different jobs and stuff like that. But like, was there anything like that they could have like been like, hey, like here's kind of like a nudge and like let's help you figure out what you want to do.
I think the really cool thing about my parents is that I never felt this immense pressure to decide, because they knew whatever I was going to choose as a career path, I would do well in it, and I truly felt like they would support me in any career path that I chose. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, and
Mm-hmm.
I I found it randomly, at the time what I wanted to do through a college class. And that was something that my mom always encouraged me to do was, if you think you want to dabble your feet in this area of life or this career, take a college class on it. You like ballet, there's a community college that has ballet classes. Take it and see if you like it.
Yeah.
Definitely realize that's not my future career, but I took a ballet class because she encouraged it. And and so that's what I think was the beauty of at least having my parents is, sure, there was not this big push like you experienced with your parents, but they were very much, I never felt like they had in their mind, well, she's has a musician as a father. It would be great, if she took the path of recording studio engineer or instrumentalist or singer. I never felt this weighing feeling that, you know, I was supposed to do a certain career because they said so. And I know a lot of people experience that with their parents of having high expectations for their kids. And I am thankful that my parents never, forced me into anything, and they were willing to support me, and they have supported me whatever direction my life goes. I do feel like I'm trying to remember what the original question was.
Was there anything they could have like you think like said or done that maybe like would have maybe like sped up that process for you or like put you in a like because I think that's where a lot of kids get stuck is that like mom and dad are going to support me in whatever and that's great. However, like I I need them to like help me kind of just like push like in that initial starting direction because like my parents like I said they pushed me to go to college but after my first year of college like I really didn't want to go back and they were like well here's the options right and so it was like they weren't saying I have to go back like well we've already invested $30,000 in an education for you they were
Right.
just were like well what do you want to do like what is the alternative to like you don't go back and I
Yeah.
didn't know so I was like okay well I'll go back for a semester and I was
Right.
like and then after a semester that's when I started to find what I was looking for and so I was like I still hated it like I did college in 3 years because I just wanted out but it was
Yeah.
like also I had a direction of like okay I can do this and this is general enough that I don't need to 100% know exactly what I have to do but it's good enough and then I can get a job and I can slowly evolve my career over time into like different things
Yeah.
that interest me.
Yeah, no, that actually that's really good because I do feel like if anything there could have been more of a push to complete something. I am very
Mm-hmm.
good, and I'm very similar to my mother in this aspect, but I'm very good at starting projects, starting jobs, starting college, and then not completing things. The follow through is something that I lacked a lot more when I was younger. I do feel like maybe more deadlines or more of a, okay, so you want to do this, we'll support you, but you need to finish your college education to get a degree. You're not, so you can have that degree to fall back on. Because I'm not a college graduate. I did several years of community college classes at two different community colleges. I never graduated. So that push to actually graduate and complete something, I think, would have been really beneficial for me to have, and thinking back, I still loved the colleges that I went to. I got so much good experience, and that's how I decided what one of my career paths was going to be, was through a college class. But I definitely think more of a firm, well, if you're going to stay here, you need to start paying rent, because learning how to do something in life like paying rent is something that you need to learn how to do, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that push to okay, guess what? Bills are real. That's a real thing. Push to get a car, push to get your first phone on your own. Because again, it's amazing that they were so accepting, and I ended up thankfully being a very self sufficient person, and someone who I'm a self starter and I can get myself through things. But the push to actually complete something like a college degree, I probably could have benefited from that a little bit, but
Yeah, and who's to say you can't go back and finish it?
that's
It's like
true.
if you really wanted to, you can.
It's a good point.
Most people once they start their career though, like they're on the path of like, I even talk about my dad about this. It's like he doesn't have a master's degree, but at this point, would it benefit him any? Probably not.
Right. Just the
But
life
he's got
experience you get from just life.
exactly. He's got 20 something odd years of work experience under his belt. It's like that is a master's degree.
Yeah, I
And
consider
so
it.
yeah, and in anything you do, you can be educated, and this is not a big push to be like, oh, everyone needs to go to college. Like it's really not. I have tons of friends who have
Right.
done like vocational work, and they gone into the trades and they do really well for themselves, and
Yeah,
I have friends who
absolutely.
go to the military, and and friends who don't do any school after college and
Yeah,
are really successful at what they do.
yeah, 100%.
But I do understand that push of like you want to do this thing, so like let's put some guidelines, let's put some boundaries around it so that you
Yeah,
can like judge what success in that looks like, right? And
right.
that's a big thing for I think a lot of young people is yeah, well, what does success look like? It's like is it a money, is it a monetary thing, is it
It's so
is it just
hard,
like
and your brain
getting
is
a
just
skill?
spinning. Like, okay, what do I want to do, and what do I like, and
Yeah, well, and we're taught so much that it's like once you pick a career path, that's like what you're stuck with, right? It's like
right,
you're gonna do this one thing for the rest of your life, and it's like that's actually not really true. It doesn't have to be true. It can be true. There's plenty of people who do want to just stick with. My dad's had the same, not the same job, but he's done basically the same thing for my entire lifetime.
yeah,
So 27 years,
yeah.
27 plus years, and it's like that's crazy to me. I can't imagine doing that when I like switch things up
I'm the
every
same.
6 months.
I'm
I'm
the same
offering
as
new
you.
things, and
No, I'm the same as you. I don't want to say I get bored, but I get like this urge to like, okay, let's switch it up. Let's do something
yeah,
else exciting, Not that I'm tired of what I do, because at the end of the day, you do have to work and you do have to bring in money, and whatever that looks like for you, sometimes it's not the most enjoyable. I'm thankful to have a job that I love, and I'm also doing side gig work as well. So it's yeah, it's I can't do the same thing every day. I would go ballistic. And
no,
I
and
think
that's the
that probably
importance of
comes
like
from the homeschool. Not every day was different, and I didn't have that mundane, 8 a.m. to
yeah,
4, whatever public school hours are. Every day was so different,
ex-
and now in my adult life, it's like nothing has to be the same every day.
yeah. Hobbies are important. Hobbies are really good, and like and if you can monetize them, awesome, but not every hobby has to be monetized. But knowing that about yourself and knowing I enjoy doing XYZ, it's like that's good. It's a self, it's a looking inward and recognizing that like I need this to keep sane in my life, because yeah, getting
Absolutely.
bored with the mundane, and yeah, we grew up in situations where it's like every day was totally different,
Yeah,
and that's what made it really fun, like
it
to be
did.
honest,
It
like I
was always
remember
so fun.
yeah, I remember being like when I got my license, and like I had a car and I was like off and doing my own stuff, and like I remember it was like 10:30 in the morning, and I'm like out doing the grocery shopping for my mom or something, just I don't know why, but I was just like at a store for some reason, and this lady came
Yeah.
up and she's like, "You're really young to be here. Like, shouldn't you be in school?" And I was like, oh well, I did school last night. Like I finished school at 2 this morning,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And she was just like she could not understand what was going on, and I was like, she's like, no, you're supposed to be in class, and I'm like, no, I did my class last night.
Yeah.
Finished at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
I'm shopping. I'm grocery shopping for my mom today, and she's like, she just couldn't. She wanted me to like leave or something. I don't know. It was really confusing.
That's
Um,
funny. I swear some
but it
people
just
cannot like
yeah
understand how that looks because it is. It's weird to see a
yeah
teenager, in a grocery store in the middle of the day. It's like
yeah.
shouldn't you
I
be
think
in school?
COVID changed that for a lot of people, where it was
Yeah,
like it threw everyone into a tailspin, and then
that is very
that's why
true.
there's been a rise in homeschooling because of that, and parents seeing like, oh, maybe this isn't super hard, right? Or
Yeah.
doing an at-home partially education.
Yeah.
There's some benefits to it, and things like that. So
Well, and I can only imagine the amount of resources there are now as opposed to when we didn't have YouTube, growing up and um uh, you had to purchase all of the curriculum yourself, or we would have curriculum sales. That was another pastime or fun activity. I feel like every so often, all the homeschool moms would get together and sell whatever curriculum they didn't need anymore. And so many families benefited from it. We benefited hugely from that. But that was just
yeah,
back then, Now to be able to homeschool, the amount of resources that I'm sure are available would just blow my mind. Like that's something I never think about is like we had a lot of great resources back then, but now, I can only imagine.
yeah, exactly. Like Google is so much more powerful now, and
Yeah.
like being able to research and learn things on your own is like insanely easy. And
Yeah.
so so with all of that being said, if you like when slash if you have kids, or you have people in your life who have kids and they're like, I'm thinking about homeschooling, like, would you say yes, or would you be like, that's do it, or would you be like, maybe some public school?
You know, I would say personally, if I don't plan on having kids, but if that were to happen, if however life goes, I personally would not see myself homeschooling, only because knowing myself, I don't feel comfortable with the education that I've had and with the extracurriculars and the artistic PE side of things, I would absolutely love that, but in reality, the academic side of things, I would want to rely on someone in public school or a private school to educate my children. I would definitely encourage parents who are considering it to give it a shot. I think that it definitely had some, like anything schooling wise, it had, pros and cons, but I would definitely encourage it. I would say, you know, if you feel more comfortable with it, if you feel strong in yourself, to be able to provide that for your children, I would definitely say go for it. I would also suggest to surround yourself with other fellow homeschoolers because I can't imagine my parents doing that with me and my siblings alone with no support from fellow parents, from fellow groups, fellow educators, because that community is what really helped us survive homeschooling. I think without that community, if you're just doing it by yourself, the resources are very limited and it's going to be a lot harder. I know that my parents leaned on fellow parents so heavily sometimes to, it was really a village raises, whatever the phrase is, a village raises a child, or,
Yeah,
everybody
it takes a
came,
village.
it takes a village, thank you. Everybody
Yeah.
came together. And for all of us, and we all were able to benefit from so many different people. So I would say go for it if that's something that you're interested in, but definitely surround yourself with, I'm sure there are communities, there are people who are interested in the same thing, because that's, I think, what made the experience so cool is,
Yeah.
the entire community. So,
I think too it's just parents being involved in their kids' education is really important, right?
Oh yeah.
It's like whether you agree with what whatever your kid is learning, if you can be there and be learning it alongside of them, so when they have questions, they feel safe to come and talk to you about it, right?
Oh,
And ask you
absolutely.
questions around it.
Absolutely.
That's how I felt with my parents and with the community that we grew up in the village. It's like that was I felt safe going to other parents and asking them questions around things too, because it was just like these were also teachers in my life, and so that was helpful. Is like ask dumb questions. It
Yeah,
just it makes life so much better. It feels
it's
dumb in the
true.
moment, but it's like just ask it because otherwise you're not going to know, right? And then
Yeah. Well, and the likelihood of that person that you're asking that dumb question to, the likelihood of them remembering, oh, I remember when I didn't know that, it takes you
yeah,
back. And every person that I like you how you said that because every parent I did feel comfortable with, and it
yeah,
always, I mean, at the time I didn't know it, but looking back, the surrounding just love and investment from all of the parents and the mentors that we had was huge. Like you said, it was always a safe space and it was always something that you could go to anyone with parents
yeah,
to talk to about. And that's just something I feel like you don't have the connection with teachers.
yeah.
I mean, again, don't have much of experience, but they're there to teach and then they leave. Whereas, my relationship with my parents is definitely something that I am very lucky to have. Not many people are, that lucky or that blessed to have the relationship like how I do with my parents and growing up with their investment too. So I think homeschooling played a huge part of that.
The other question I would ask too is, people always say like, "Oh yeah, homeschoolers are weirdos," which we are, but like, does it get better? Like, after not being a homeschooler for
Oh,
it's been 10 years for me, so that means it's been 11 years for you.
11 years. Wow. That's crazy.
Dang.
That is
Not to date
so,
ourselves or anything, but
no, but that's so weird to think about. And also, like, I'm still so young, to put it in
yeah,
perspective. Like, I, how I would answer that is everybody's weird. Everybody goes through a very weird adolescence, whether it's public school or homeschooling. Um, and I mean, it didn't stop me. I'm still weird, but I definitely learned so much, moving from homeschooling. And, I get to the point now where people ask me, if the topic comes up and I say, yeah, I was homeschooled, either they say, yeah, that makes sense, which I'm always curious about that answer, or
yeah,
just,
same.
oh,
I'm
that's
always like, what
cool.
does
What
that
was that
mean?
experience?
Yeah,
And I definitely feel like I don't know, it absolutely gets
it
better.
changes.
And I feel comfortable in the space now where I am my own person and,
Yeah,
I've been able to take some things from what I grew up learning and I've been able to find my own path and I think I really value what homeschooling gave me and that's what becoming an adult is like is learning who you are and if that resonates with what you learned growing up and it it does get better, I'm
yeah.
I definitely, I know for me at least it does get better. I have seen, the typical homeschooler stereotype, where you stay that way your entire life, and I'm sure that happens. But in my case, and I think definitely in your case too, like it absolutely gets better. So,
Yes. Yeah, I look back at photos and I'm like, oh my gosh, we were cringy as hell. But but the other thing that has been great about homeschooling is like I have lifelong friends who I grew up with, and
yeah,
you being one of them, and
yeah,
I have other friends too, who it's just like I will be friends with them probably until the day I die.
absolutely,
I will be friends
yeah.
with them for a very long time, and
And
you
it's
know,
this thing where
I
you can not see them for years. I mean, when you were in
yeah,
college, I didn't see you for, 4+ years. And you come
yeah.
back and it's just like nothing changed, You can still
Yeah.
talk about the old times, new times, but yeah, they're just solid people who are going to be in your life forever.
Well, is there any other is there anything else you want to share? Any other cringy stories? Any other tidbits of advice that you're just like
Oh,
that people
man.
need to know?
We could do a whole separate episode of cringy stories, so I will leave that for part two. But um, just you know, I say just do you. It's gonna turn out all right in the end. It always does.
It's all gonna be
It's all
okay.
gonna be okay. Wow, super TED Talk vibe of me, but
Yeah.
um, no,
No, thank you so much for coming on and chatting
this
with
was
me
so
and
fun. This was like,
reminiscing.
it's the reminiscing that gets me. It's like, oh, like
Yeah.
certain memories that you brought up. I'm like, oh gosh, I completely forgot about that, you know?
Yeah.
It's just,
Exactly. No, and that's how I feel too. Is like thinking back, I'm like, there's things I blacked out or whatever that I'm just like now I'm going through old photos and I'm like trying to kind of reinvigorate myself of like, okay, what was like homeschooling like again? Because like I said, it's been 10 years. Um, it's been a little over 10 years at this point, and it's like, oh my gosh, like I remember doing these different things that were
yeah,
just like some of them super awful and awkward and terrible, but other things are just like so great and they're just like such strong memories of like
yeah,
growing up and just having fun, and just
yeah.
being kids and being allowed to be kind of the weird kids where we had interests. Oh, this was the thing I was going to bring up. This sparked my memory. Here we go. Cari and I were in a class together in high school, and we filmed an entire movie together. That we had
To
a movie premiere, we had a red carpet, we had
to
all of these crazy things.
to preface on that, that wasn't the assignment, okay? It was a
No,
British literature class. We were reading The Importance of Being Earnest, and it was an extra credit work if we filmed a scene from the
scene.
book or from the play. You get extra credit. I don't know
Yeah.
how it turned into what it did, but we filmed the entire script. We got
Yes.
our friends involved. We had like a cast of 8 different people, I want to say. We filmed at different locations. We had a movie
Yep.
premiere, like you said. Like,
Yeah, I
best
was looking back at
best
photos,
year of my
and
life right
we did a
there.
music video. Your dad let us record a song in the studio, and then we made a music video. We released it on DVD. I know it exists out there. Um, when my grandfather passed away, they found like 2 copies of it in
No
his
way.
house, and I
Oh,
was
I
like,
would
those need to
love
be
to watch it
burned.
again. I mean, we had this movie premiere at a friend's house and we got dolled up. We had cake, we had food. All of the members of the homeschool community and more, like people from my church
Yep.
came who I
Yep.
didn't really know. People came out to support, like, and it was a 3 hour long movie. Don't forget that. It was long. It was,
It was long,
we
yeah.
spent a long time on it, and I'm pretty sure people were so tired of it by the end because I mean, we were kids. It was so poorly produced because we didn't have anything better, you know? But talk about like the best. I feel like it happened over the course of 6 months to like a year of
It
just,
was a long
it
time.
was so
It
much
was a
fun.
long,
We learned our
yeah.
lines, we did the costumes, like we asked friends' parents to film at their houses. Like, talk about one of the best memories I have with you is definitely that.
Yeah, I had to bring
For
it up
sure.
just because, yeah, like I said, looking at photos, I saw some photos from it, and I was just like, I was reminded of, yeah, just it was awkward and it was terrible, but like looking back, I wouldn't change that for anything. And how many public school kids get to be like, I filmed an entire movie and had a red carpet premiere for my
Yeah.
movie? Not
Yeah.
that many. How
Not
many
that
homeschool
many.
kids? Not that many. But for
No.
us, we did it. We did the thing. We had golden stars. We had cake.
Yeah.
We had popcorn. We did the full
We did the
movie theater
full.
backyard experience. It was
We
great.
did.
It was fantastic.
I
That movie
remember
will not be
feeling
shown anywhere. You cannot find it on the internet.
it's not
Do not
released.
go looking
I'm
for
pretty
it.
sure the music video is still up there on one of my old YouTube
It
accounts.
probably is. Yeah, you can hear my voice cracking.
Linked down
Um,
below. No.
yeah, links. Yeah, links in the show notes. Probably not. Don't go looking for it, please.
No, you, yeah, definitely won't be able to find it. It's in the archives, but that was just. I mean, we did theater, but there was nothing that compared to that, and
Yeah,
just the effort. I mean, I really hope we passed that class. I can't remember. I think we
we
must
did.
have.
We did. My mom gave us all A's. She was like, the amount of work that we put into that. She
We
was
put more
like,
work into that than actual homework. It's
yeah,
like
I did the actual
extra
class. Yeah,
credit.
yeah, yeah. I think everyone else in that class was like what are they doing?
No one got it, and it was just whoever was a part of it was a part of it. And
Yeah.
again, I still don't even know how we just thought of it, but it, it just happened. It was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. No, super fun. So that's another encouragement for parents, and is like, let your kids be weird and do really fun, quirky
Well, because
stuff
at the
with their
time we didn't
friends.
think we were weird. I mean, I knew I was not cool, but like I never thought I was weird until looking back. It's like, God, that is so cringe. But at the time, that's just what you did. You
Yeah.
just filmed a whole movie from a book. You just
Yeah.
wore matching superhero shirts because you could at groups or whatever. I don't know if you remember that. We definitely did that a
Yep.
few times.
Yeah. No, we definitely did that,
Um,
and yeah, you just did.
You just did it. You were on the
You
mime
just
team. You
did
did theater.
stuff.
Like you
Exactly.
took home economics class for girls.
Yep.
You know? And that's just what you did.
That's yep. That's just what it was. So anyway, yeah. Well, thank you for coming on. I really
No, thank
appreciate
you
it,
for
and thank
having
you for
me.
being my first interview.
Very fun.
Um, Many
This is
more to
great.
come.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you'll come back
I
and do a part
will
two.
I would love to do part 2, but also I would love to hear this podcast is going to be so rad because every person's experience is different. And it's so cool to open up the conversation of the stories that people have and, you know, what people are going through now as far as homeschooling. I'm sure it's different. Some things are the same, but it's just going to be so cool to hear what people have to say about their experiences. And I'm very much looking forward to that too. So thank you for this brilliant idea.
Well, thank you. And yeah, if you're new to the podcast, because, well, this is the new podcast. So subscribe, like, follow, leave it a rating, do all of the things that you already know how to do. And let me know if you've got questions that you want answered. I will do my best to make them be answered. So, all right. Until next time, later.